Hi, I'm Margaret, and welcome to my wonderful knitting life. This is a channel where I like to show all of my crafts, my knitting, sometimes crochet, sometimes weaving, and sometimes some video clips about life where I live, which is on the North Shore of Quebec, Canada. Today is Saturday morning. I've just walked the dog, so hopefully they'll be nice and tired and they won't be interrupting with their normal barking. I also am reminded by my family to ask you to push the like button and hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying my content. I am also on Instagram, and I will put that information below if you would like to see me update my projects. I do try to do that a couple of times a week, but I'm not an everyday kind of person on Instagram, but I do put updates there and my new projects. I take pictures and sometimes videos and add them to my collection. The little video that I put at the beginning of my introduction is a beach that I went by on my way back from weaving last weekend. I've been trying to get in the habit of being a little bit more adventurous and going down some of the roads that I don't normally visit. I'm only expecting to be living where I'm living for another year. I'm a teacher here on the North Shore, and it is an absolutely spectacular, beautiful place to live on. There's mountains behind us, sandy beaches everywhere. And I took one of these roads down to a small community that is between the town that I live in and the town that I go weaving at. And I found a public beach, and there wasn't a soul on it besides myself. So I took a few videos. I'll put one at the beginning, and maybe I'll add a couple at the end as an outro for today's podcast. So today, I'm just going to move the video back a little bit. Today I'm wearing an archive knit. This is a knit that I made probably about 11 or 12 years ago when I was working in a school that was really, really warm, but of course it was extremely cold outside. I taught on the Magdalen Islands for 2 years. There is a very, very small English community on the Magdalen Islands. It's an archipelago and is joined together by a causeway type highway, an absolutely stunningly beautiful place. And the school was quite warm, so I made an awful lot of short sleeve cardigans and sweater type things. And this is one of those that I made while I was living there with my children. So this is a free pattern. It is the 105-9 Julianne by Drops. And I will write that in the pattern notes so that you can find it. It is a super cute little pattern and a fast knit. It's a DK weight yarn. And I used Knit Picks City Tweed in order to knit this. So it is a cardigan style with just a few buttons at the top, and it's open for the rest. It's garter at the top, and it's exactly the same on the back. And then there's this really, really pretty lacy, not quite cable, but just a beautiful little pattern for the rest of the garment. A little bit like an empire style waist, I would say, which I really like. I really like that A-line type garment. And this one, I wouldn't know from memory what needles I knitted on, but I'm sure it's like a 4 or 4.5 given the drape. This yarn I've used many times, the City Tweed by Knit Picks. I used to buy quite often from Knit Picks when the exchange rate was more favorable for Canadians. And they have a fantastic November Black Friday sale. So I would pick up sweater quantities of this yarn, and I think I still have one sweater quantity left, but it is not here. It's at the cottage outside Ottawa. So another thing that I'm wearing that is a fun little thing are the earrings that I'm wearing today. So these little earrings were a gift by a student at the end of the year 4 or 5 years ago. And the school that I teach at, I'm really lucky and honored to say that we have a third of our students that are Indigenous. They are from the Innu and Naskapi peoples, and they really do make a wonderful addition to our school. I often get to hear about the culture, and I'm really honored that the students share that with me. So these were made somewhere in the community, and one of my students gave them to me as a gift. I did wear some beaded earrings in another video that I made a couple of videos ago, and those were also a gift, and they were made here on the North Shore. So that's just a fun little fact about where I live. All right, so some of you have probably heard that Quebec has had massive wildfires, and my community certainly wasn't spared from that. A week ago Friday, if it was that long ago, I can't remember, maybe it's 2 weeks ago now, we went to work on Friday, and the minute we walked outside, we could smell the smoke, and there was actually ash falling in the sky. So we knew that something was going on. And the day before, on Thursday, I had walked my dogs after school, and the people that I walk with had seen what we are calling a chimney, but you could see the plume of the fire coming right up into the sky behind the town. So that would be the north side where the forest is. And we weren't too impressed by that. We were a little concerned. It was clear it was a forest fire because there's nothing else back there. And then, of course, we woke up on Friday and it was not looking very good, but I got ready. I went to school just the same, and it was extremely smoky, very dark skies. And by 9:30, of course, the rumors started that they were going to start evacuating the smaller areas, pockets of communities to the west. And the west is really the only, there's one road to get out of town. So that they were evacuating that area was a little scary, given that that would be the way out. To go further east, the highway ends, so there's only so far you can go that way. So people were getting a little bit nervous, and then all of a sudden we were told we were having an emergency closing. So at 10 o'clock, we closed the school. We sent all the children home. The buses came. And it was very nerve-wracking not knowing exactly what was happening. So I wasn't sure what was going to go on. So on my way home, I filled up my tank of gas just in case I had to leave. And I came home and just basically started biting my nails. And it wasn't shortly after that that we heard that the east end of town, 20 minutes away from where I live, was having to evacuate. And I have a good friend who lives out that way with her boyfriend and their Burmese mountain dog, their 112-pound Burmese mountain dog. So I messaged her and I said, you have a place to come if you need to get out. And they did. They had to evacuate by 4 p.m. that day. So they came and stayed with me. And I live in a bungalow. So we basically separated the house. There's a bedroom and a bathroom downstairs. So they stayed down there with the big dog. And we kind of closed the door. So my little dogs, because I have a pug mix and a Pomeranian, and I also have 2 cats, so that the animals wouldn't intermix. We weren't sure how they would react. And they stayed with me for 5 days and 4 nights. And then thankfully to all of the military and the Red Cross. And now, of course, people from France, South Africa, all over the world, United States, they have come up here to help fight the forest fire situation. And our situation has really calmed down. Although there are times where the smoke increases and you can smell it when you're outside, see the occasional ash. But from what we're told, we're safe. We're okay at the moment. So all of this stress and tension led to a new cast on, because that is one of the things I like to do when I need some tension release. So what I did cast on was the Pressed Flowers sweater by Amy Christoffers. I managed to get a very large quantity of Noro yarn from a store called Wooltime in Ottawa. It is the largest yarn place I've ever seen. It's almost warehouse style, and it is in a warehouse type area. If you're ever in Ottawa, I would recommend just going to take a look at it. It is incredible, the number of yarns they carry. Both commercial, indie dyers, everything from around the world you can imagine. So they have what's called a tent sale in August, and a lot of yarn is trucked in, mostly commercial yarn, but very, very nice yarn, I have to say. Like, I'm not against commercial yarn at all. It's very affordable, and there's lots of wonderful things to be found. But they also will put in this big sale things that, you know, maybe they're moving off their shelves to make room for other things. And they package them in these great big bags, and you'll get like 10 balls for $25 or 10 balls for $60, depending on what it is you're buying. So I would say 3 years ago, I picked up this Noro. And it doesn't have a colorway. It just has color numbers. And this is 2161 Lot A. And it is called Silk Garden Lite. It is, I looked it up, it's a DK weight yarn. And it's 45% silk, 45% mohair, and 10% wool. It's a 50-gram ball with 125 meters in one ball, and they recommend a 4.5 millimeter needle. And it's a multicolored changing yarn. And the yarn changes color fairly quickly. Like if you were making a shawl, you would probably get maybe three rows or 4 rows with one color, maybe a little more if it's a narrow shawl. The colors are very, very bright and dynamic. So I picked that up 3 years ago. And then last summer, and I never used it, by the way, it just kind of sat in my stash. Last summer, I picked up this colorway. So this is a plain, I'm getting a bit of a shine there. This is a plain goldy brown, but it has flecks of colors in it. And they call this one their Silk Garden Light Solo. It has the same weight and meters, the same composition. It's just more of a solid. And I really didn't know what I was going to do with these. I thought of making a shawl. And then when the Pressed Flowers sweater came out, I put it in my favorites. And in all that forest fire stress, I just had a little flash of ideas. And I thought, I know what I'm going to make with that. I am going to make the Pressed Flowers sweater. I thought about doing the cardigan, but I ended up doing the sweater. I'm working on quite a few cardigans, and I just kind of thought, I'd like to make it and not have all of the steeking and the finishing to do. So this is kind of a boxy knit. I'm not a fan of super boxy. So they suggest going with a lot of positive ease. I started making the size 2, which I think has a chest circumference of 42 inches. And then the next one, the size 3, is 49 inches. And 49 inches is a little too big for me. I wasn't looking for something super oversized. So I went with the 2, and I kept measuring my gauge. And this garment is interesting in its design because you really don't have to pick your size, because your size is really chosen by how long you make your yoke. And there's increases constantly happening through the yoke. I don't want to give away too many secrets, but it made it easy being top down for me to just decide where I wanted to go with this. So I started making the yoke, and it was really popping quite nicely. But when I first started, I found it to be very cardboard-like, and I wasn't liking the feel of the yarn in my hands or in how it was knitting up. So when I got to the split for the sleeves, I decided to soak it in eucalyptus and lay it to dry because I really wanted to see how this yarn was going to behave. I felt like my yoke was a little short, and I did not want it to be cutting me in the underarms and pulling up. So I soaked it, and the yarn completely relaxed. It developed this wonderful drape. The drape is wonderful for a DK. I usually like to make fingering weight garments because I find they're more drapey, but this one, there's no problem with drape now. So I split for the sleeves, and now I'm basically just knitting down the body. And I have tried it on a few times, and I'm really, really happy with it. I love working with color, things that pop. Most of the time I don't make neutral knits. I'm a bit like a magpie. I have to have that color interest to my knitting. So how I'm making each section of the flowers with my Noro yarn, which looks beautiful in this ball. But what I found was that if I wanted to get a flower that was mostly one color, and I did just try knitting through, and I wasn't liking the effect. It wasn't really making the flowers enough of one color, or one, at least, you know, like a light pink and a dark pink. It wasn't really doing that. So what I've been doing is cutting out the sections of colors as I'm knitting. So if I want to make like a teal, I'll have to cut this out and just use it, and then go to another ball and cut out that section. And I find that I need about 3 sections of one color in order to get one flower, one section of one flower. It's probably going to be a little easier on the sleeves, that it'll be less, maybe 2, maybe 1, who knows. But in doing this, I have created the most epic amount of yarn barf ever known to man. I think I have maybe 3 balls that I haven't cut into. So there's 2 at the bottom of this bag, and there's this one. But when I'm finished, I'm going to have to do quite a bit of work at balling up what I've got left. And there's no doubt I am going to have quite a bit left. So I do have plans when I've made the shawl to make a cowl. And Amy Christoffers has a cowl pattern, but it's more of a long cowl that maybe you would wrap twice. So I think now that I know sort of the way to make the flowers with the slip stitches. Oh, and that's something I forgot to say. This is mosaic knitting. So you're basically knitting the same row twice. But it makes a very easy color knit for somebody who maybe is a beginner. But I'm really enjoying this. I'm not finding this boring at all. I really, really love doing this pattern. I've memorized it now, and to pick it up and just knit on it is a pleasure. But the colors are keeping it super interesting. The slip stitches are fun. So yeah, no, this has been a great knit. I've been plowing through it super fast. This has basically happened in 2.5 weeks. And sorry about all the pieces falling off. I've got the barber cords for the sleeves and lots of ends. That's something that is going to be a problem with cutting in all the balls, is the ends. But no, it's been going pretty fast, and I've been mostly exclusively knitting on this. It's really enjoyable, and the mohair doesn't feel scratchy. I don't know how they've made this yarn because I don't see the halo of the mohair. It's an interesting yarn to work with. I've never worked with it before, but now I do know what it's going to look like when I soak it because I've already done that and it's going really well. Whoops, I'm losing a few things. All right. So I have been working a little bit on my Positive Vibrations shawl. Not a lot, because the pressed flowers right now has just really kept me going through this stressful time. But the pressed flowers shawl, I am into my second ball of yarn. So as I've mentioned before, the pattern uses 1 solid and 2 variegated or color changing yarns. It's all tangled up here. So this I've shown before. This is not new, but I love it, so I'm going to show it twice. So I have done quite a bit. I've done the whole body of the shawl in its glory. What a wonderful pattern. Short rows everywhere. I will never forget now how to do short rows. I'm well versed. So I basically hit the end of the main part of the shawl with my 1 ball, which you are supposed to be switching out and working with 3 all the time. But what I did is I just worked with my plain and my 1 striping yarn, and then I just switched to the other striping yarn, which is a different colorway, but I'm really liking it. So I have started the border. So right here is where the shawl ends. And now I have started doing the border, and you really do these massive short rows to develop these sections, and then you go back and you do short rows to fill in those sections. So I'm kind of mid-row right now. I've had to be very careful about where I stop, because to pick it up and know where you are is important. But 1 row now with all of these huge short row sections can take me, an hour or 2 hours. So I have to really dedicate myself to committing to a section when I sit down, and I find that I can't do that when I'm talking to somebody. So this is very much a at home, just by myself project. I went out last weekend with some friends. We met at a cafe for breakfast. They're all crafters, and 2 of them were knitting and 2 of them were crocheting. I did bring this, but I didn't get it out. I got out the pressed flowers project to knit on, and even then I made a couple of mistakes and had to backtrack. But how fun is it to meet with some friends in a little cafe for 3 hours and talk and knit? Like, that is just wonderful. I'm so happy that I found some friends here that I can do that with in town. And we plan to do that again, maybe next year, once a month or something. It's just super fun to have that camaraderie, which is also what I find watching podcasts. I find that camaraderie when I'm knitting at home. And I feel like I'm with a friend and they're talking to me and telling me about their projects. It's super fun and a pleasure for me to contribute to that community. I am a little sick, so forgive me. My voice is a little deep. My eyes are a little watery. I am a teacher, as I mentioned, and the end of the year is quite tiring. My students have had ministry exams. I'm busy marking them, doing report cards. And then on top of that, there's all the activities that are going on. So I do find at the end of the year, I tend to pick up a virus, and that's what happened this past week. And I'm hoping that I can fight it off and not end up super sick. So I have a whip to show you that's from the archives. This, I might have started this 4 or 5 years ago. My daughter made this project in I think it was a dark green, in the same yarn. And this is a yarn that I also picked up from the Wool Time tent sale. So this is called Tiny Tots, and it's a Sirdar DK yarn. It's called Sirdar Snuggly Tiny Tots Baby Fashion DK. And this is a mix of 90% acrylic and 10% polyester. Not something that I would probably choose now. I'm much more of a wool, silk, cotton, linen person. But this is also a great yarn. At well, I'm going to show you the bag because this is just an incredible price. Mind you, if you were to go now, because I did pick this up maybe 6 years ago, it probably would be more like $25. But this whole bag, which has 10 balls, was $15. And I got 2 bags because I'm not a small person. I'm quite tall. I've mentioned that before. And I would normally wear maybe a large, or if it's a sweater that's quite snug, I'd go up to the extra large to get the ease that I like. So I always make sure when I'm purchasing sweater quantities that I get enough. And 10, 50 gram balls probably wouldn't do it for me if I'm making sleeves and making it long. So what I'm making with this, or what I was making with this, is a pattern called the Crossover by Linda Medina. And it is from the Creative Knitting Magazine, Spring 2014. I'll just cover up some of the information here. So this is a textured, well, I'm getting a bit of a glare there. This is a textured sweater, and it has a bit of a dip here at the bottom, which I did not do. And it looked absolutely beautiful on my daughter. She did it with the same yarn, and it turned out fantastic. Given the makeup of the yarn being acrylic and, what did I say that was? Polyester, made in Turkey. I find that that's really a good spring or a fall combination. It gives a little bit of warmth, but not too much. So let me show you what I had done. I did pick this up actually last year and worked on it a little bit more, and then probably got sidetracked by something. So I have the entire back done apart from the neck shaping. And I'm going to see if I can spread this out because it has a very wide cable, and this is not going to be easy to show. So it crosses here, and then it has this big flat space, and then it's got another cross there. And in between the crosses, there is pearl. And I love the color. And I have done this much of the front. And, you know, it has a really nice drape. It feels really nice to the touch. And I think I'm probably going to have enough left over to maybe make some baby garments. I have a lot of friends, and of course my children are in their 20s. And I figure that there's going to be some babies coming at some point. So I might start making some little baby garments and just have them on hold for gifts and shower presents. So if I have any extra, which I'm pretty sure I will, I think this would be great for baby garments or even a blanket, but I don't know that I'd have that much left. It would be machine washable. So fantastic for babies or kids. So I will put all of that information in the show notes so that if you're interested in checking that out, you can. The last thing I have to update you with is some weaving. So I've been going to the 𝐏𝐔𝐑𝐒, which is about 40 minutes away from where I live. And I have some wonderful friends there. A couple of weekends ago, we had a brunch. And it was kind of the end of the year, school year, I suppose, little celebration. And then I went weaving afterwards. And some of the weaving had been cut off the machine. So I was able to pick up a new project that I had done. So, sorry for the creases, it's been folded. So this is a new tea towel, which in French is called linge à vaisselle. And that was new to me. I didn't know that. And if you have the little cloth for washing dishes, that's called a torchon. So we can make both of those at the Farmer's Circle or the Cercle des Fermières. And they also have a serger there. I don't have one. I do have a sewing machine here and another one in Ottawa. Have to have one in both places. And they have a serger there for common use. And my friend taught me how to use that. So I was able to finish off the edges with the serger, so I don't need to zigzag that to lock the threads in place. But I do need to do the hem on my sewing machine at home. And I have a lot of that to do. I think that's going to be something I do in the summer. All of these need to be hemmed. I haven't done them. I love to go weaving and then I come home and they're beautiful, but I need to hem them. They're probably going to be Christmas presents. So that might be on my summer to-do list. But that's my weaving of late. The colors are not chosen by me. They're chosen by the members at the members meetings. I unfortunately don't go to those. I'd like to, but I do live 40 minutes away and they're usually on like a Monday night and I work full time. So it's just too much. And you know, the members there, they know that I don't live nearby and they know I work full time. So thankfully they understand that I can't do that. And I also don't speak fluent French, although I do have conversational French and enough to go and get my tires changed and take my dogs to the vet and that type of thing. So I can't serve on the executive, unfortunately, and I would like to do that, but there'll be a time for that where I can give back maybe when I'm retired. Yeah, so that's my latest project. The colors that are put on the loom are decided and then they're ordered, and there are people who kindly set up those machines. There's generally 1 or 2 people who volunteer to put the threads on the machines. And then you basically sign up to go and weave. And I am signed up to go tomorrow to weave on this machine. So I'll be able to make a couple more of these blue tea towels, which is wonderful. So that's about it for me for the last 3 weeks. That's what I've been up to. This will probably be my last podcast from the North Shore, but I hope to podcast from my cottage in the summer. My nephew wants me to teach him how to make a crocheted gnome, so I hope to talk about that, and he seems to want to join me on the podcast. My nephew Nate is also a soap maker, and he has been developing his skills quite actively, and he's coming up with beautiful products. He packages them really well, so I really hope to have him talk a little bit about that. So again, if you are enjoying my content, it would be wonderful if you could like and subscribe and support what I'm doing. And you can visit me on Instagram if you have the time, and I will put a couple of videos at the end of the beach that I visited last weekend. So until next time, take care, happy knitting, stay well, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.